All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board, for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Am I recording? Welcome to episode 256 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill, admin on the KissFAQ message board. Today I'm joined by Ken, 69th Blizzard.
Hello.
Marcus Almighty Mark.
Hello, sir.
And maybe someone else will trundle along and join us, since we did move the times around and communication is not our forte. All right, what news do we have in Kiss World? Obviously, they wrapped up their second leg of the End of the Road tour in Glasgow, my former hometown. What's that, 2 days ago? So they're back in the States now, preparing for the third leg, which kicks off August the 6th in Florida. And David Garibaldi did tweet out that he would be joining them then. So that kind of suggests that you won't be getting the 30th anniversary of any album by any other band performed as an opening act. And instead you will indeed be watching more paint dry, which most normal people don't go to 47 shows and thus see it repeatedly or miss it repeatedly. Hey, Lonnie.
What's up?
Hey.
We just started. I'm just monologuing, so kick back, open up a beer, and I'll be done waffling anytime.
Nice shirt.
It's 99.
I feel you, buddy. Over here, it's brutal as well.
So Lonnie's hot in the shade today.
Not much shade.
Yeah. Okay, so what was I saying? David Garibaldi, it seems, will be opening up the dates in the summer in the U.S., which, of course, for normal people should not be a big deal because they haven't gone to plenty of shows already. And, if that is the case, then you know what? He's going to bring the art to the people. So it is what it is. I, again, was entertained. I like David. He's done some really fun stuff. I loved his portrait in Scotland, obviously, with the Scottish flag behind Kiss. I know that drives some Americans nuts, as I found out way back when I did Mr. Blackwell's Kiss Experience in 1995 and got boycotted for having a Union Jack in the Kiss logo because they're an American band. But maybe we've moved on a little bit. So that's cool. The tour is a wrap. It's the same set list every night. A lot of happy faces. Those audiences in Britain were absolutely nuts. I was surprised by how packed those houses were. All across Europe, fans have been, very positive about the experience that they've had, which is not surprising because it's a hell of a show. It's a great set list, so it is what it is. So if they're coming to your neck of the woods and you've missed them, don't miss them. Regardless, get off the fence and go and see them. What else?
My brother saw the show in Manchester, England. He said it was absolutely fantastic. He was up on Tommy's side of the stage, like in the lower bowl. And he goes with me every time they come around. But he was impressed, and he's a fan, but he's not, a diehard fan. Where I don't think he sat around and watched a lot of YouTube clips of the tour. You know what I mean? But I think he was really impressed with how different the Kiss show was, as opposed to years of seeing them for the last 18, 19 years since going back, including the farewell tour. And you know what I mean? He was really impressed at how different it was, despite the fact that you would complain about the set list or whatever. He was just thoroughly impressed how different looking it was, and how much of a different experience it was, even though it was a lot of the same songs.
Yeah. I think it helped, though. I think it probably helped a lot to bring people in with that, to be honest, because I think that was a major complaint with people before, that they're seeing the same thing visually. Now they're not. So I think that brought out a lot more people, especially probably in Europe, where they probably, were thinking now is the time to see them. So they were probably double happy for it, right?
Yeah, and come on, we're a KISS podcast, we're KISS fans, we're a totally skewed perspective. So obviously your brother's enough of a fan to go and see them in a different country, in Manchester, of all places. I mean, come on, Manchester. Ugh.
That's where he was. That's where he was for work. I'm
a Liverpool. Again, I've said it before. I'm a Liverpool guy, so Manchester. hate mail coming in 54321. What other news do we have? For me, the cool stuff is the new Pods and Sods 6-pack episode came out today, and I was really flattered to be invited to be a part of this show with Eric Miller and Lee McCormack to do a 6-pack of Peter Criss, and each one of us brought 2 of our favorite Peter Criss songs to the episode, talked about them, what they mean to us, what Peter means to us, and a whole bunch of kind of Peter Criss KISS-related topics. So it was great to get an opportunity to, again, pay homage to Peter Criss, who these days is by far my favorite original member of the band, for very obvious reasons that we've talked about ad nauseum on this show. But there were some great picks, so do go over to Pods and Sods. And I don't even have the link ready. I'm so unprepared today because I was just listening to it. But go over onto the FAQ, and I've got it stickied up at the top of the page. Because you know what? I think it's a pretty good episode. I just listened back to it, and I wasn't cringing listening to myself for once, which I never listen to our shows, guys, because, sorry. I'm a complete tool, and I don't really want to relive the experience. So that's up there for your listening pleasure. Today's episode, again, we're going back to the board, and there's I said it on the Pods and Sods episode, there's a lot of good discussions that kind of get buried within the reputation of the FAQ. People are like, well, it's the FAQ, it's all, negativity and banging on stuff. People do start topics that start off very well. They may well get derailed by some serial abusers, but you know what? There's a lot of good stuff on there to kind of dig into. And this show gives us the opportunity to kind of talk about some of these topics without the static of the trolls who I need to get around to banning. I'll get there. So why don't we dig
time will come.
Your number is up. I can't keep you gone. You will be back. I know that. You'll have a new name. But Chris, Rising Force, will smell you out and know immediately from your writing style that you were banned previously, and then he's watching you. And as soon as the evidence pops up, he will get out the hammer and squash you like the bug that you are. And then the process repeats 245 times in the case of some people. All right, so let's get into some of these board topics today. Hair Metal KISS, Crazy Nights versus Grunge KISS, Carnival of Souls. Which do you prefer and why? Let's start this one off with Lonnie.
I was listening to Carnival of Souls on my way home today because I knew this was going to come up. Ken was prepared as well. So it's a difficult question because they're both albums. I mean, it is Crazy Nights is a stereotypical hair metal album. I mean, that's exactly what they were trying for. I mean, they wanted to be Bon Jovi. They wanted to be a Def Leppard type of sound. I mean, and they got exactly what they were looking for. And Carnival of Souls came out in '97, a little late to the grunge party, and it sounds grungy, I guess, and it's in a different, it's produced like a grunge album, but it's a difficult question, really, which one of those two I prefer. And I think at the end of the day, I do choose Carnival of Souls over Crazy Nights. And that may be the unpopular opinion. And you know what? The show wouldn't be fun if we all had the same opinion.
True.
So I choose Carnival of Souls because I like the darker tones to it. And I like hair metal. Don't get me wrong. I like Bon Jovi. Probably my wife tells me I like Bon Jovi a little more than I probably should. And I like Poison. I know that's going to make Julian's nose turn up too. But I do prefer this album to Crazy Nights. I I just do. I like Master and Slave. I love Hate. I'd love to see them perform Hate live. They never will. They will never touch this album. I think a better chance of them doing something off The Elder, which they actually have done live. They have done The Oath. They have done Eye on the Curse. They have never touched this album on the Curse, not even close. Bruce has. Bruce embraces it because it's almost a Bruce Kulick solo album because of what was going on. But I choose this album over Crazy Nights. I like the songs better, and I like the darker tones and the darker production better than the poppiness and really trying to chase the hair metal scene in 1987.
I want to bash Poison so badly, but they're really no different than Kiss, just with a little less makeup and more peroxide.
Sure. In those years, absolutely.
Come on, is there really that much difference between CeCe DeVille and Ace? Well, apart from Ace, really. Ace wrote a bunch of really catchy solos that people are copying and inspired people to pick up the guitar. People like CeCe. And CeCe really knew how to have a good time.
Well, Kiss wanted to be Poison at the time. Kiss, I mean, look how they were dressing on the Asylum tour. Look how they were, and then look how Crazy Nights was produced.
That has nothing to do with Poison. That's all Bon Jovi.
But they wanted to be a hair metal band like Poison. How about that?
No, they didn't, because Poison didn't exist when they were doing it. They wanted to be Bon Jovi and Def Leppard Pyromania era, because you can't even say.
Came out in 1986.
Crazy Nights has nothing to do with Hysteria because they were both being recorded around the same time. Well, Hysteria was obviously being recorded for about 9 years before it actually came out, but they both came out in the fall of 87, so there's never been a parallel between Def Leppard and Kiss other than Pyromania. But
I will step down.
I totally agree with you on Bon Jovi. And I'm also guilty of liking Bon Jovi a little bit more than I'm supposed to admit, at least to keep the faith. And that's where my cutoff point occurs with Bon Jovi. But I would much rather listen to a well-produced, awesome-sounding slab of record in the form of Crazy Nights than what is to me now a shitty-sounding dirge of Kiss wanting to be Alice in Chains. So I'd much rather Kiss wants to be Bon Jovi and Def Leppard than Kiss wants to be Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and probably Pearl Jam. And maybe that's just because I'm a few years older than you, and I was embedded in that Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Twisted Sister, Rat, and all of that. That
plays a role in it too.
Yeah, in the mid-1980s. So there are songs that I love on Carnival of Souls, but I really can't tell you the last time I listened to that album, but I can tell you that I listened to Crazy Nights last week. Ken, what about you?
Well, I listened to both albums today. So, it was kind of hard in a way to decide, but really, Crazy Nights is the more Kiss album or Kiss style album. The fact of the matter is, they wanted somebody to produce them and sound like Bon Jovi and Heart, because that's what I think it is. I think it's Bon Jovi meets Heart kind of sound. But the songwriting is pretty good for the most part on the album. Most of the songs are pretty darn good, except for again, it's the problem with Crazy Nights was the production, in my mind again, and they just needed to not do it, that way. There's no reason to chase Bon Jovi. It just to me it didn't work. But having said that, it's better than Carnival of Souls. Carnival of Souls I like in a way. It would have been better again had they not had Toby producing it. I think if it was more like Revenge production, it would sound better in my mind. Plus, it's another album that's heavy Gene dominated. The song quality on those, I think Gene dominates, and it fits his style. Obviously, it fits his style. The Paul stuff, I only like 2 Paul songs on Carnival of Souls, and that's Jungle and the other one that For His Son.
You don't like
I Will
Master
Be
and
There,
Slave? It's great.
right? Those are two great songs, but pretty much the rest of the Gene songs, and maybe except for one, I think they're all good and would have been great. And now, had they used the songs for Paul Stanley from that he did maybe on Psycho Circus and brought those back, and those would have been mixed with the Gene songs and then produce it, that would have been probably a pretty good album. Anyway, after going through all that, Crazy Nights, I think, is the better album, mostly because it's still Kiss. It's their style. It's just the production neutered it a bit.
Yeah, it's better rounded. I mean, it really has better quality overall as well between the songs. I mean, one of the things that struck me with Toby Wright's production, and hopefully one day I get the chance to ask him about that, is that it feels rushed. That they almost knew, I guess, that the reunion was about to happen, and they just kind of went through the motions and didn't give any attention to it. Just said, get it done. They didn't sit back and argue about mixes. They didn't sit back and listen to a dozen layers. They just took 4 basic instruments and mixed it and said, okay, we're done. Here, Mercury, here's a new album. Whereas Bob Ezrin would have said, no, we need to go back in and fix this area. We need to do this section. We need to, Gene, that lyric sucks, Gene. Come on, you're not putting that on any album that I'm producing. Whereas I don't know. Again, I want to ask Toby this. It seems that he's more of an Eddie Kramer than a Ron Nevison on that album. That he's just recording it and then putting it together rather than really focusing on sounds and all of those elements that makes an album pop. And Mark, as a musician, will be able to speak more about that. But Mark, your take on that and everything that I've said that you disagree with.
Oh, I don't disagree with you necessarily. I'm just saying that, well, first of all, let's get to my choice. I like Crazy Nights better. I think that might be a surprise to some people. But I just think overall it's just better songs on there. I mean, we can talk about the production all day about whether it's too weak or, Nevison didn't give them enough nuts in the sound department for it, but it's definitely a sound that fit in for that time period. They definitely had a sound that was popular around that time. Unfortunately, I guess Kiss wasn't as popular as those bands that were really popular at the time, like the Bon Jovis and those other ones that were discussed earlier on there. As far as Toby Wright and what he did with Carnival of Souls, I think Julian might actually be right. It sounds like a Rush job. And it's funny, one of my friends who were listening to it once with me said that it sounds like the songs got better in mix as the album goes on. It's like the first one was kind of like a hockey stick mix where they just threw all the faders up and said, that's good enough, and let's just put that down. And then as the songs went on, they sounded better and better. But it's funny because I looked through Toby Wright's credits of his production and his mixing thing, and there's a lot of albums that he's produced that I like that sound really good. I mean, ones that stand out to me, and I mean, you got to remember also too, because I know I'm going to get a couple of facial cringes when I mention them, but it's also think time period too, right? I mean, he did a Fear Factory record I like, Transgression. He also did Follow the Leader by Korn, which was a huge album for them, and I think he did a fantastic job on that. He also has a lot of mixing credits, and for every album like Carnival of Souls that we poo-poo and say it sounds terrible, he's done other records that just sound fantastic. I mean, one of them that stands out for me is the Alice in Chains album, Jar of Flies. Sounds really good. He was involved with that. He's also involved with Jerry Cantrell's solo record. I'm pretty sure Boggy Depot, I think he did that as well with him. And he did Boggy Depot. But then there's also records too that he did that were fully produced, but he was responsible for only the mix that I didn't like Queensryche's Here and the Now Frontier. I hated the sound of that, and I was a huge Queensryche fan. So when that came out, I was like, ugh. He turned them into everything I didn't like at that time period, that kind of grungy radio thing. I was like, ugh, well, why did you do that to them, it's, but I mean, that it could have been what the producer wanted in the final mix, right? I mean, he also did Slayer's Divine Intervention, which is a record I didn't mind when it came out. It was pretty heavy as hell. So he can do it. He has the talent. He has the skill. So again, that points back to the question that Julian brought up. Was this a rush job? Was it like, let's not, spend too much time on sounds and waste too much money on it. We know we're going to do the reunion. So what the hell? Like, I think that's more the situation that happens. So I think Crazy Nights is all the better for the attention to detail that they put.
I mean, you can almost imagine Toby getting on the phone to Gene. Hey, Gene, I got a reference mix. Let's get together and talk about, what you want to do with it. He comes on over, and Gene's like, okay, that's good. We're done. We're doing a reunion with Ace and Peter. Thanks a lot. That'll work just fine. And, it goes in the garbage can, in essence. So, again, I would love to know the context of, did they sit down and mix? What were the parameters? Obviously, we know that they were going for a more contemporary sound. I mean, God help anyone who says that they're going for contemporary, because that usually means clusterfuck or palava, as the case may be. It usually goes wrong. But, what was the dynamic? Because they were rushing. They came off tour in 95, and, it was December. You remember getting the updates on AOL back in the days of KAOL and Jerry Miller and Kiss Nation and all that. So they were in the studio and Music Grinder, and it was done fast. I mean, it was recorded fast, and it was circulating very quickly after that. And when those bootlegs were circulating and you got them, you're like, well, this is sludgy, and you're like, well, this is only like generated 10 times at this point. You're like, holy shit, this is a pretty bad sounding album even then. And then it comes out and you're like, okay, I remember getting the promo CDs in from Mercury, or Phonogram as it was in London. And I was like, I couldn't wait to put it on and hear the full mix. After Revenge, I was expecting something to sound like Bob Ezrin had tinkled angel dust over it, and I was like, what? My bootleg doesn't actually sound that much worse than this thing is. So that really is a problem with it. Whereas Crazy Nights, while it may be over polished, I think it also stands up better to the test of time, because you can go back and listen to Crazy Nights and you're like, holy shit, that's mid 80s. And it's dated, but it still sounds solid. And I go back and listen to Carnival of Souls, and other than maybe 3 or 4 songs, I mean, I Confess, Master and Slave, Jungle.
Hate.
No. You don't like Hate? Hate is good. I like Hate.
Hate's good.
I like Master Slave. No. I like Rain. The one Paul song I like Jungle, but I do like Rain too. I think Rain's good.
Seduction of the Innocent. So I think I'm 2 Genes and 2 Pauls, evenly split honors for that album for me. Whereas Crazy Nights, I'm probably going to tend far more towards Paul's material on that album, because, come on, I've always been more of a Paul songwriting fan than a Gene fan, with the exception of Deuce. So,
and maybe for me, it's like the Gene songs are so much better on there than they are on Crazy Nights, because Gene is pretty weak on Crazy Nights, and I'm. And I really like the darker Gene songs that appear on Carnival of Souls. So maybe that's what does it for me.
Yeah, it's not a very high bar. Gene's material on
Crazy Nights is pretty bad. Good Girl Gone Bad. She found love in the back of my car. It's pretty bad.
Well, other than Hell or High Water, and I'm going to say the live version of No No No, which was way better just for what it allowed Eric and Bruce. His material was really pretty dire.
Pretty rough.
The 80s were unkind to the demon.
Yes.
He was pretty unkind to us in the 80s.
Yeah.
Ken, we've been all talking and just leaving you out of it. Any final thoughts on that before we move on to the next topic?
On that? No. I think we've butchered the topic.
He said his piece on that.
It's enough.
The voice of reason says no. Edit her out. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's go to your recommendation for a bit of discussion. And, of course, the recent 25th anniversary of Gene and Paul raiding the Detroit Kiss Convention. And were they justified in stealing back all their stolen stuff? Well, give us the word.
Yeah, well, as everyone knows, or most people know, that there was a Detroit convention. What was it? I said 95, right?
94.
Or 94, right before KISS launched their own, set of convention shows, because KISS conventions were happening thing back around then. And anyway, the deal is they stormed that Detroit convention and were, grabbing back a bunch of their stuff, mostly, I think, costume pieces, I believe, that somehow got into the hands of fans or whoever. And the thing is, were they justified in getting these back? Because it seems that the warehouse that these were in was the payments stopped, and they kind of let go of it and didn't pay to keep it. And I think these pieces were auctioned off, as far as I know. So if people had bought those, why, if they, bought them legally, I guess, to a degree, how can KISS go back and grab them? There's that thread where this came from on the message board, where they also put a Bill of Coins comments about that situation, and he says that the KISS's business manager at the time, they told him, say, hey, the man, what do you want to do with this warehouse full of the KISS stuff? Do the guys want it or anything? And the guy told, the business manager at the time said no, and let it go. And so that's what happened. So did he ever go back to Gene and Paul and ask them if they wanted to let that stuff go or not? It's kind of, to me, it all depends on how it happened, but I think they let it go. It's gone. They shouldn't have been able to, get that stuff back. That's just my opinion on it. And I think if those people who had that in their possession, they could have said, hey, fight to get that back if they paid for it. I mean, it's not their fault that the band let that warehouse go and they stopped making payments or whatever. They want to keep it. So I don't know. So I don't know what your thoughts on that were.
Possession is 9/10 of the law.
Exactly.
And if I put something out at my curb and someone, we have like bulk pickup twice a year. And if I put something, before bulk pickup even comes, if I put like a used lawnmower out at my curb, before bulk pickup even comes, there's looters that go around the neighborhood and start picking shit up and putting it in the back of their trucks before bulk pickup even comes. If I put something out at my curb that I don't want it anymore, and I'm making it clear I don't want it anymore, well, then I can't go and say, hey, well, I found out that that's worth some money, so you know what? I kind of want it back. You can't. I don't agree with it. Possession is 9/10 of the law. And once those people had it, and you didn't want to make payments on the warehouse anymore, and you thought it wasn't worth anything, I'm sorry. I don't think it's right.
Right. Lonnie's on the side of the Jawas. R2-D2 and C-3PO are goners.
That's right, John.
Star Wars reference.
Doesn't matter, huh? I've heard different things. Number one, the warehouse, apparently someone was selling stuff out of it long before rent was up. So a lot of the stuff had gone into the ecosystem illegally, that it was being sold by people or persons unknown out of there who had access to it wholesale in some cases. And I think it's also a matter that KISS really is a dinosaur. Gene and Paul are very slow on the uptake. So when they saw the expos and the fan conventions in the 80s, it was no big deal. It didn't really register. Eric Carr going to them, it was all nice. No, these are our fans. And then they kind of saw how much money was being generated from it. So I think ultimately the conventions were their own, worst enemy, that they became too successful, that people could go there and buy bootlegs, they could buy all sorts of things, and then these collectibles started showing up there, whether they were being shown off by proud owners, taking them out of their cellophane wrappings and mothballs once a year for a little bit of ego stroking of look what I've got, or also to offer on the market. So they may well have said, well, fuck that. What's going on with our warehouse? And I don't know who the managers were, whether it was Jesse or Larry Mazer or whomever. Find out what's going on with our shit. Because when Gene and Paul, I presume, look at something, they either think it's theirs or they don't care how it got onto the market if they think it's theirs. So, go take that. Mark was showing the video before. I mean, someone who bought it for cash, they could even have had the person selling it write them a receipt. You know how much that's worth? Zip, if that person didn't have the authority to sell. So I think they just saw the commercial opportunity at a time where they were not doing the best in terms of their touring on the Revenge tour. Was that a beer delivery?
I know, she just threw it at me. I was like, come on.
You just have that effect on people when you're talking Kiss.
Sister?
You talk Kiss.
There she is.
Becky wants to strangle you. You're talking about that fucking band again.
A little peek behind the curtain of what my life's really like.
Lonnie, I'll send flowers. We will remember you every day on July the 18th, the day Lonnie finally pissed off Becky enough to strangle him. So I think getting back to what we're supposed to be talking about is that Gene and Paul simply saw a good opportunity. They saw the conventions making way too much money. They saw stuff of dubious providence and took the opportunity because, again, as you said, Ken, possession is 9/10 of the law. And it was Lonnie?
Lonnie. I just agreed with it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, as Ken said, possession is 9/10 of the law.
No.
That they had the lawyers and the police with guns in order to get that shit back.
And they got guns.
And they got guns, too.
They had guns. That's great.
Mark, I need a sip of beer. Take over.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with a lot of what was said in general about this. I mean, to me, my opinion on it weighs on what the actual story is. And I guess the problem with that is that we probably don't know what the real story is. Is it a situation where these people got it legitimately? Probably not. Some of these pieces, I can imagine that maybe some of them were, 5-finger discounted from the warehouse and then sold, somewhere in a shady parking lot somewhere for money, right? And if that's the case, then I guess they have a foot to stand on to say that they want it back if they didn't get rid of it themselves, right? But it's like you said though. How long have these conventions been going on? How long have these things been out in public eye? And only at that point did they start really caring about it. I think you made a valid point, Julian. I mean, now that they started seeing dollar signs, chinging in their eyes, only then did they probably start going back in there and saying, okay, no, we want this all back. And that's the part of the video that always makes me crack up is when you see Paul going, this here, no, this here, this, take this. And the guy's probably just sitting there going, what the fuck, man? The guy, the guy's like just going through and just decimating his whole collection without, no remorse at all. Just take that. I mean, I'm honestly surprised that there wasn't a dealer in there, that didn't say no, and start having a pulling contest with them trying to get it back from
them.
Come on, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, none of the dealers had lawyers or legal advice because I'm sure they could have said, "Not so fucking fast, buddy." I mean, Paul is just emotionless because that's his shit, and you're the thief to him. So it doesn't matter how you got it. So I can totally understand him having to be that way. He's not going to have a conversation with you. Well, you know what? You really shouldn't have been sold that. Could I have it back, please? No, no. It's like take that shit right now, or else. And the people there are like deer in headlights. Saying, the lawyer would be saying, show me some fucking evidence. Everyone hates lawyers until you need one, right? And that's when you need one. When a band's
sitting there with cops too.
Yeah, everyone bags on cops as well. But here's kind of the part with it, that as soon as Kiss sees the dollars, it's their, come on, they're the band, we're the fans.
That's what it came down to.
It's their money. And if you suddenly start making a lot of money on their name or with their shit, then of course they're going to take an interest. Mark, back to you. Sorry to interrupt.
I mean, I was agreeing pretty much with what you were saying. I just thought it was funny, though, that there wasn't much of a fight from the people there who had it. Because, I mean, if these things are as valuable as, we think they are, you would think that some of them would have probably tried to stand up and keep a few of these items. But I think some of them were probably not so much deer in headlights, but probably was sitting there in shock going, cool, man. Paul Stanley's on my booth, man. This is awesome. Even though they're taking stuff from him, right? He's totally taking my collection, man. This is great.
We get this but he takes his boots.
But I mean, if it's one of these what if things, like what would have happened if by chance there was a lawyer present in that audience, What would you have said in that situation? Would you have said that they were in the right and the wrong? I'm really curious about that because, I think both parties had some feet to stand on each way. But, look, I mean, nobody wants to get ripped off. I mean, being in a band myself, I'm lucky, very lucky, that was never one of those bands that had a situation that I've seen many times happen where you can play a gig, take your stuff, you go to the hotel, and in the morning you come out and you have a busted window and half your shit stolen from your vehicle from a gig, and nobody likes that kind of shit, and sometimes it's impossible to find the stuff afterwards, right? So I can understand the anger and the aggravation of having your stuff taken without you selling it, right? So I can understand that end of it. So I guess I kind of lean toward Paul and Gene.
I would love to see if Paul's Laboo V ever surfaced, how he'd react to that. The one that was stolen from the Village Recorder in LA when in August 74. Yeah, that would be interesting because there was a lot of stuff around that time. They certainly picked up interest, and I guess maybe people didn't get the message because Christie's auctions, where they were selling stuff, and Kiss went out with press releases saying that is fake shit, do not buy it, and forced Christie's to, and that's a reputable auction house. It's almost echo of the recent stuff with Peter and the shark earring.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So it's not something that's going to go away. And I would think these days, as Kiss reaches the end of the road, people with those collections that they've been showing off may want to actually put some of that shit away. Especially those of dubious provenance. If anyone ever sees a double platinum alive award presented to Sean Delaney, well, that was fucking stolen from his funeral. So,
really,
there is stuff that when it surfaces, it's going to point to who did wrong. Just like the instruments, there's costume parts, there's things. What is it? The Panthers from Destroyer Tour. The first set went missing. So a lot of cool shit, but it'll all come out in the end. Or to be at Goodwill, Sam T. Serpent, original prototype, found at Goodwill in Albuquerque or somewhere. So
well.
That's why I got rid of all my shit. All right. Let's move on to another one of these topics. This is a quick one, and again, it's just 2 songs off the top of your head tonight. Ace Frehley to reunite with his former Frehley's Comet bandmates at this year's Cruise Fest. You know what? Return of the Comet have been fucking tearing it up at the shows. I can't believe how well they're working, how fun those performances are. It's great to hear that catalog of songs again. What are 2 songs? If you were going to the Cruise Fest, that you would love to hear Ace get up on stage and do. And you are not allowed to state the obvious, Rock Soldiers and Cold Gin. It has to be something interesting. Lonnie.
You're going to do that.
Of course. Because you were thinking about that beer.
2 songs for me from Ace Frehley.
Come on.
Breakout, of course. Breakout. And Into the Night. How about that?
Well, that's like saying Beth and Rock and Roll All Night, but okay.
Oh, okay, well, fine. How about
God.
America?
No,
Five card stud. How about that?
Richie's not in the band.
Damn it.
Oh, wait, yes, he is. I'm sorry. Jesus, Richie. Oh, God. I'm damned by
Five
my...
card stud. I love 5 card
By
stud.
being difficult, I'm damned.
I love 5 card stud. That's my answer.
No, that would be fun. Cool. All right. Ken.
Okay, I'm thinking Love Me Right.
Ooh.
And We Got Your Rock.
Oh, nice.
I like those 2 a lot. Those are back to back on the album. Those are really good. So
I love Me Right. That's just got a great swing to it. Hey, I can't even say anything obnoxious. Yeah. Mark.
Good.
Well, I was going to agree with We Got Your Rock. I definitely think that's a good one to pick. And, I mean, I also kind of like Do Ya. I mean, I've always thought that was an interesting cover that they did. Yeah, but I think it's a good version. Ace usually doesn't do too badly with covers, I find. So sometimes I'd rather hear him do those songs than some of his own, to be honest. I mean, I'd rather hear Do Ya than Dolls. I mean, come on. That's a terrible song. So
I like my dolls.
I hate that song.
I like my dolls.
All right, so what am I going to do? We're going to go back to 1994, 95. Take Me to the City. I want to go a little bit obscure, and I want Richie and Ace, and I think Todd can really bring something to that as well. And then, of course, I think they really need to dedicate Back on the Streets to Vinny.
Yes.
Oh, no. Kidding. Dedicate.
Yes.
Hey, Frehley's Comet did it, so it's fair.
Yes.
It's completely fair. And
right.
It's probably the only way we're going to get a live performance of that song, so why not have Ace and Richie and Todd? There we go. I'm a troublemaker. I'm going to burn it
Love
now,
it.
and I'm okay with that. All right, so let's see. Where are we up to with these Kiss albums you feel that aren't far off becoming a concept album?
Oh, boy.
It seems only appropriate to go to Canada when we're talking about concept albums.
Well, the only record that comes to mind that was never officially said to be a concept record, but I've heard many stories about it, and even I think the podcast did a big thing about this as well, was my favorite Kiss album of all time, Destroyer.
It's a gold record. Come on.
Yeah.
That's right.
But
I'm so glad I chose you first. Amazing how that happened.
So great.
But I understand the theory. I mean, Ken Mills did a great thing about how the songs kind of flow into sort of a story, and when he kind of presented it, I was like, yeah, it makes sense that could have been kind of looked at as a concept. I mean, I don't think that that's what they initially intended, but it kind of does make you think that it could have been worked out into a concept record. But honestly, I thought long and hard about this topic, and I, for one, can't think of any other record that Kiss has done that could be even slightly thought of as a concept record. Maybe Julian can, help me out here. I mean, not the obvious thing like The Elder or something like that, but that we know was supposed to be but wasn't, right?
Okay, Lonnie.
I think Destroyer is the obvious pick. I mean, other than The Elder, obviously. But I think you could look at Psycho Circus as being a type of concept record, not far off from a concept record. Between the opening song of You're in the Psycho Circus, I Want to See From Within, I pledge allegiance to the state of rock and roll type thing. and ending with this journey of 1,000 years, kind of summing up the whole history and the whole concept of the band. I think Psycho Circus could easily be looked at as that kind of record.
It's interesting because they did say there was supposed to be their next kind of Destroyer record. So maybe you're on.
Yeah, so they're so you could look at them as kind of like sister albums. From the way the album starts off, and then the way Journey of 1,000 Years ends with the same guitar solo that's in Psycho Circus. You could definitely look at it as a concept album. That's my pick, is Psycho Circus.
Fair enough. What? I always loved what Podcast did with their analysis of Destroyer. And that really did kind of make it clear that, there's an underlying thematic kind of structure to the songs and the steps. But I think you can also apply that same kind of logic, or beer logic, to an album like Creatures of the Night.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Where you start off with the declaration that this is about the night, the creatures of the night, and what happens at night? Usually nothing good happens at night, so you've got saints and sinners. And
Killer.
What also happens at night? Naughtiness, so keep me coming.
Wow. Damn, Gina.
And then you've had too much of a good thing, so you got to get out of that rock and roll hell. And
wow.
Momentary flashback to the Elder, and you're in danger. And, flip it over.
Oh, God.
It's all about...
Flip it over? What?
It's all about the night. It's all about the seedy. It's all about... Again, it's a concept of sleaze.
Interesting.
And
never looked at it that way.
A couple more beers and it might make sense to me. There you go.
You gotta convince yourself at the start.
Yeah, I saved Ken for last just to talk us down off this ledge that we're on.
Well, it's
who's crazy and who's not?
It's tough. I mean,
what to talk us down or what?
I don't know. I don't know. But I was kind of looking over them of the albums, and I can see Lonnie's point. I can see Mark's point. But I don't know. The one I thought could be turned into a concept would be the very first album. It's, to me, it just reeks of New York City, New York. And to me, it's more about on the streets of the city and what goes on in the city, with Strutter walking the streets of New York, nothing to lose. Maybe it's more prostitution related. I don't know. But Firehouse, that's all. There's a firehouse as you're walking through the streets of New York City. Cold gin, again.
It's like the action of New York.
It is. It's just all New York. Let me know, maybe. I'm not going to mention Kissin' Time because that's kind of was added later on anyway. It doesn't really fit with the rest. But Deuce, and Love Theme from Kiss is just instrumental, so I can't go there. But 100,000 Years maybe. But Black Diamond especially. Black Diamond. A lot of those songs fit together, but it's all. I just, when I listen to that album, I just see the down and dirty parts of New York City of the time back in the 70s, where it was pretty, garbage infested and dirty, and a lot of that was going on at the time before they cleaned it up. I mean, it's all been cleaned up now, but back then it was really grimy. It was very grimy back then.
Has it really been cleaned up? It fucking smelled pretty bad.
Well,
you were just there, Julian.
Yeah, twice in the last 2 years, and come on, it wasn't that clean. It was like San Francisco, only muggier.
Well, San Francisco's the worst.
They're like New York City and San Francisco are analogs. They're just on different coasts, and one has more bugs than the other.
But it is interesting though, because when you think about the comparisons, all those songs do have kind of they're like descriptive situations of New York City. Like Cold Gin is definitely like every corner liquor store that you could get into, and because it's almost just it's almost described within the song that way, right? Yeah. You know, you can go to any kind of store around the corner and get yourself some booze and go back to the house or whatever, and that's it. I mean, it's a good point. I never really looked at it that way. Yeah, it's like the first album is like a snapshot of New York City, each song.
Yeah.
Well, that's what they knew.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you have it.
That's interesting. We're going to have to spin that album now. And
all four of us with different opinions. That's interesting.
Yeah, what happened there?
I know. That's what makes the show interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Not lemmings.
Let us see. Do we have any more? Mark, Lonnie, anything you want to add in? Lonnie's now logging into the KissFAQ.
I am caught.
Like, oh shit!
Damn it, you put me on the spot.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the board, though. It does
gives us ideas.
Well, yeah. Well, here's one. I mean, on Facebook soon, and that's the new Pit Stop series, which has been announced for. Is it tune in tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time? Kiss backstage footage, scenes, crews, interviews, and all that. So maybe something's finally going to start happening. Well, except King of Hearts 89, who says, well, that was a big nothing. Maybe not. All right, well, let's leave that there for this week. Again, there was one little bit more of a topic that I think would take a little bit more time to talk about. And since I have some chicken in the oven, I think we'll leave that for next week. Hey, always got to be honest. Dinner is more important than talking Kiss, especially when it's a yummy dinner like that. So, all right, let us know what your thoughts are. You know, we've tackled a whole bunch of kind of topics that have been going on. What do you prefer? Do you prefer hair metal Kiss or grunge Kiss? Tell us that we're wrong as well with our opinions on it. What two songs would you love to hear Ace do with reunited Frehley's Comet? That is, of course, the Return of the Comet are performing at the Kiss Fest, or pardon me, the Cruise Fest in Miami. Go to cruisefest.com. Or is it kisscruisefest.com? Whatever. You'll find it. It's on Facebook. It's all over the place. David Garibaldi opening up for the third leg of the tour. Thoughts on that, especially if you have not yet seen a show. If you have seen a show and seen David, don't chime in because you've already seen him. Then, of course, Kiss albums that you feel aren't far off being a concept album. So, and what do you think of Gene and Paul stealing everyone's shit in 1994? Get the feeling they'll be doing the rounds again, as I've already mentioned. So that's it for now. Do tune in to Pods and Sods, a 6-pack of Peter Criss, which was really fun to do with Lee and Eric. You might even hear something new. Who knows? So for now, from Ken, from Lonnie, from Mark and myself, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we've broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.